So we're one of the sponsors here, so we do have to do a really, really quick intro bit, and I'll try and speak as fast as I possibly can so that we can get onto the interesting stuff. We are TribePad. Our mission is to make recruitment fairer, faster, and better. We're a talent acquisition platform. That means applicant tracking system, onboarding, video interviewing, all that sort of stuff. We work with 150 of sort of the UK's best-known companies. We're always guilty of putting sort of the well-known logos on the slides, but actually loads of companies are the sorts of organisations who you might not have heard of, smaller companies from sort of 500 employees all the way up to 200,000 employees. And so, you know, whether you're serving sausage rolls at Greggs, figuring out the weather. We just won the Met Office recently, so if you're presenting the weather, you got your job through TribePad, or a vicar in the Church of England. It's really quite diverse. We work with all sorts of different organisations in healthcare, retail, hospitality, local government, all kinds of different things. There's at least 3 TribePad clients in the room, and I've met 2 of you so far. So Burrow Hapholder here somewhere, who I've not said hello to yet, but I will come and say hello afterwards. Anyway, what we're really proud of as well is we've now got more than 100 different partner integrations. So whether that's candidate assessment, candidate experience tools, background checks, right to work checks, all sorts, and of course your HR system integrations. And that helps us deliver a really brilliant end-to-end experience with the best sort of technology point solutions. So I'm definitely going to come and talk to Stard because I thought that looked fantastic. So I'll come and say hello to you later. Right, that's the sales bit done. So now we'll get back to why we're here. Everybody in the room is interested in candidate experience, and we've already heard about how important it is for that 99% of people who don't get the job that first time round, and how important that can be for your brand. So we've got some brand new research to share, which dives into this into quite a lot of detail. We first did this report back in 2022. We've updated it just before Christmas, so you're literally the first people we've presented this to. So I hope it's really, really useful. We spoke to more than 2,000 people from all across the country, different geography, different gender, different company size, all that sort of stuff to try and get a really representative view of how is ghosting affecting candidates and, importantly for this audience, recruiters. So let's start with some good news. When we did this survey back in 2022, we asked that same thing I did with the hands earlier, as who's experienced ghosting in the recruitment process. And a couple of years ago, it was 65% of people said they had been ghosted during the recruitment process, which is pretty shocking, but was kind of similar to the number of people who put their hands up in the room there. The good news is it seems to have come down in the last couple of years. Still 43%, which is a pretty big number when you think about the recruitment process, and very similar to what Kerry was saying in terms of her experience. I think it was 28% that she experienced. But it seems to be down. So that's good news. The question is why? And maybe we can explore this in the questions later on. You know, what's changed at your organisation? Do you think, as a company, it's happening less for your candidates? Have you experienced it less? We'd love to claim credit that just by doing this survey, we've made it reduced by a third, but that seems pretty unlikely. So perhaps you've got some ideas as to what's working. There's an interesting difference when it comes to gender. So men are much more likely to report that they've experienced ghosting than women, significantly higher. Now, we've sort of thought of one reason for this. I don't know if anybody saw, I think it was last year, or possibly the year before, Harvard Business Review. They published a really interesting piece of research about the difference between men and women in the job application process. You might have seen this statistic that men who met 60% of the minimum requirements of a job would apply for it, but women would only apply for the role. And it was something like they had to have like an 85% match before they'd apply for the role, whereas men were much more likely to go, yeah, I tick 6 out of 10 boxes, that'll do, I'm ace. And they would apply. So we sort of think, well, maybe that's a reason why men are experiencing ghosting more than women, because maybe they're applying for more jobs and sort of winging it, and therefore getting rejected earlier in the process. Don't know. Be interested in your thoughts in the Q&A later. We also saw quite a big difference geographically. London was the high point, where 60% of people were saying they'd been ghosted. The Midlands was the low point. So I think Birmingham in particular, West Midlands, 34% of people. Now, you sometimes hear that, and I'm a northerner, right? Not that the West Midlands counts as north, it's somewhere in the middle, obviously. You often hear that stereotype, oh, you know, it's more friendly up north. I just don't believe that's the case. So is it more likely that there's just more competition for roles in the metropolitan area, right? So people are applying for more jobs because it's more competitive, and therefore the application spam is coming in, and therefore we were talking to a recruiter just earlier on our table, 450 applications for a role. Well, you can't possibly give quality feedback to 450 people, so maybe that's what's going on in London, is people are just being swamped more so than in other parts of the country. Don't know, interesting. Age played a really important factor as well. So apologies, this font is a little bit small. So the purple line is the results we got from 2022. The orange line is the results we got from 2023. So lower across the board. And then you've basically got people who are 18 to 24 over to people who are above 64. And the trend is pretty clear both times we've done the surveys, which is the younger you are, the more likely you are to be ghosted. And again, there could be all sorts of different reasons for this, right? You're likely to be going for early career roles. Perhaps you're applying for loads of different things. Perhaps it's hourly roles, blue-collar roles, roles where there's less experience, so more and more people are applying for them, perhaps retail, hospitality, things like that. And perhaps as you get to the sort of older age of the spectrum, you're much more discerning. Perhaps you're applying for only a few roles where experience is really important, and therefore you're applying for the sorts of roles where the recruiter isn't overloaded in the same way. Or perhaps you're just not aware of ghosting as a thing in quite the same way, so you don't sort of label it as ghosting, you just say, oh, well, I never heard back. Don't know. So again, some really interesting thoughts here. But I guess a key takeaway for me from this is, you know, as an 18 to 24-year-old, you're 5 times more likely to be ghosted. And as we heard earlier in the day, right, is that impression that you have and that experience, is that going to stay with you longer, therefore, and influence your opinion of that organization throughout your career? So are we damaging our chances, you know, in the long term to recruit these people? Now, we've already heard from, you know, personal experience of how emotionally affected people are by ghosting. And, you know, we see that 87% here of people are bothered by ghosting. It's kind of obvious, right? But 44% say a little, you know, okay, it's annoying, I'll get over it. We've got 12% of people who are saying, yes, really severely ghosted. You know, 1 in 10 people, they're getting really depressed by this, and it's really affecting their well-being. And we know that there's been, you know, particularly the last couple of years, all sorts of layoffs for all kinds of different reasons in all kinds of industries. So you have people who are experiencing this problem of repeatedly applying for jobs and applying and getting their hopes up, not hearing, and just disappearing into that black hole, which is, you know, really affecting their self-esteem. And I think probably everybody's organization over the last couple of years has put, you know, we're all putting more and more effort into employee well-being, and there's better and better understanding of mental health in the workplace. And can we extend that out to candidates and non-employees? And, you know, have we got the empathy to share that with people who aren't yet part of our organization? And in terms of how long does that last, it can be quite a long road. So we had about a third of people say it can take weeks or months to get over the disappointment of not being rejected. It's not about being rejected. It's about not hearing and not knowing. And it's that uncertainty which really seems to stay with people, you know, for weeks and sometimes months. And again, the younger you are, the more likely you are that this is going to sort of haunt you for a longer period of time. When we think about the immediate sort of emotional impact, nearly half of 18 to 24-year-olds say that ghosting left them feeling moderately or severely depressed, like severely depressed from the recruitment process. So, you know, the general trend is coming down, which is great news, but there's more to do, for sure. There's a couple of interesting quotes that we got here. This is a verbatim response we got, and it said, "It felt like a joy to get a response, even not a positive one, at least there was closure." And, you know, that was pretty much exactly what you heard earlier in the day. Just the hearing a no quickly and empathetically can actually be really good news for a candidate, because they're often expecting to be ghosted. So, you know, on the one hand, it's a bit disappointing that people are sort of expecting to be ghosted, but actually we don't need to do much to really improve that experience, which I think is really positive. The Virgin Media case study, which if you haven't read that, I would definitely recommend going and having a read of it. It's available online in loads of places. It's really interesting. Kerry mentioned about the story there of she's cancelled her subscription with the cosmetics company. There is a real long-term impact to your brand of these candidates going and basically being unhappy with you. So if any of you have ever done like marketing A-level or a marketing course, right, there's this famous thing that if you have a good experience with a brand, you'll tell 2 or 3 people. And if you have a bad experience with a brand, on average, you'll tell 9. So an unhappy candidate plus 9, you literally 10 people are now talking bad about your brand. And some of those people will then come on stage and talk to 100 people about your brand, right? So there's lots and lots and lots of good reasons to improve the experience. I'll give you one example of one of our customers is Subway. They have just a really small, simple thing they do. If you make it to interview and you're unsuccessful, in the rejection email, which again contains a little bit of personal feedback, it's only short and it's email, it's not a phone call, but what it does is they attach a free coffee voucher and say, if you want to know more, come into the store and we'll tell you a bit more. Hardly anybody actually takes them up on the voucher, so it doesn't cost very much, but it gets a really good response from the candidates who feel that they've been heard and they've sort of recognized that we don't want you to not come to our shop anymore just because you didn't get a job. We still empathize with you. I thought it was really good. I loved them. I can't remember if it was possibly Olga earlier who said that they got a rejection email to a TED talk of how to handle rejection. I thought that was a fantastic idea. What a great idea. So I think there's just little things we can do. So in terms of that impact, 91% of candidates, isn't a big surprise, right? 91% of candidates say that it leaves a negative impression of your brand. Hugely powerful. And that word spreads, and we know that from a reputation point of view, what's on Glassdoor, what's on LinkedIn, what people are saying down the pub, it has a long-term effect on your brand and therefore your future chances to source, particularly if you're in a volume role, where you're trying to go back to the same pool over and over again to bring people into your organization. So it does make things harder. I think probably in the last roundtable session, there was quite a lot of variation in terms of the challenges that people are dealing with, right? In terms of attracting candidates at all, having too many candidates, attracting candidates from different backgrounds, engaging with hiring managers, getting the process right. So we're all trying to work on making our application process more efficient, faster, easier for hiring managers to engage with, more data-driven, less bias in the process, and people are introducing more candidate assessments. So there's some good ones here today, for example, where we're trying to reduce bias, be less reliant on CVs, which we all know are absolutely hopeless and inefficient, biased way of recruiting. But as we do that, as we introduce more stages into the recruitment process, potentially candidates are less willing to engage with us on that journey if they have experienced ghosting before. So it's something that's sort of harming us. And I think that is the key thing, particularly for this audience of recruiters, right? It's hurting all of us. I'd be really surprised if there's anybody in the room who's saying, yeah, I'm dealing with far fewer recruitment recs per person than I was 3 years ago. Everybody's being asked to do more with less. Everybody's being asked to produce more data, be more efficient, spend less money on recruitment advertising, more. And so what we're also seeing is candidates are ghosting recruiters. So more and more candidates are just abandoning in the middle of the process. And it's not just in the early stages. We see all sorts of examples where candidates are now accepting multiple job offers. I came across an example last week where a candidate started at company A on Monday, attended company B on Tuesday, and then decided which job to start. So literally started 2 jobs. Didn't just have multiple offers, literally accepted and started 2 jobs. So candidates are doing it to us as well. We've experienced it at TribePad. We're only a small company. There's only, 54 of us now. Eva's somewhere in the room. She's employee number 53. Wave, Eva. Where are you? There she is. We have had people start in our customer support team, and literally we've been sat there on day 1 going, where are they? Friday night they said, yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you Monday morning. Just did not show on Monday morning, didn't return emails and phone calls. So it happens to all of us. So what we're seeing is more and more people are ghosting us as recruiters. And in this young age group, sort of 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 34 is unfortunately young for me these days, but there you go. A third of people are admitting to ghosting recruiters, which is causing all of us all of that rework, all of that effort, all of that heartache, particularly the longer you've got somebody down that process, the more pain it is to go back to the beginning and try and start all over again. Probably won't be surprised to know that men are more likely to ghost than women are. I'll just leave that there. So what can we do about it? That's the research. I think there's some encouraging points from here and there's some worrying points. But the good news is this trend does seem to be getting better for candidates. So perhaps that is more organizations using technology to do the easy bits. Perhaps it's better awareness. Who knows? I really loved some of the tips we've already seen today. There are some really simple things that can be done just in terms of using the tech to do the grunt work, so you're not having to do that manual admin over and over again. And it's worth saying that candidates aren't expecting a personalized phone call if they've literally just clicked Indeed Apply and they've literally applied with 2 clicks, right? I think it's totally fine to have a commensurate amount of feedback based on how much effort and emotional engagement the candidate has put into your organization, right? I think that's fine. So just really simple acknowledgements early on using SMS or email, really simple messages delivered quickly and in a timely way are absolutely fine. One of our candidates, HCRG Care Group, for example, they're now responding to every single rejection. They're going back to the candidate within 48 hours in 100% of cases, and they're just using the technology to do it. It's not using much time. They've written the emails in a really nice, empathetic, personal way. They've got a drop down where there's about 8 or 9 different reasons so it's it's still quite generic, but it's really early on. It's you didn't meet these requirements. This was missing. Thanks very much. And again, it goes out and it helps them get a really good candidate experience score for those candidates who are rejected. I think also. Again, it was touched on this morning, as people are moving through the process, keeping people updated. Look, you have made it through to shortlist, but actually we're not going to get back to you for another 2 weeks now because our job hasn't closed yet. So we're going to wait till everybody's got to shortlist. It just sets the expectations. It's really, really helpful for the candidate. It stops them contacting you as well in terms of those inbound inquiries that can be quite difficult to handle and just generate work. So there is stuff there that you can do. And particularly, if your technology's got a portal for the candidate, they should be able to log in and see the process, see how far down the journey am I, what stage am I at, so that, again, it just helps them manage their expectations, reduces that angst and that concern. This is probably the most challenging one. It's easy, it's non-trivial as a TA team to come up with some service level agreements and say, right, well, we're going to give feedback within this amount of time, and if somebody's got to this stage, the candidate, the hiring manager is going to fill out a form that gets feedback for the candidate. But actually, what we're talking about here is getting hiring managers to do stuff. Because I think in this survey, right, when we say, have you ever been ghosted by a recruiter, we're not actually talking about being ghosted by a recruiter. We're talking about being ghosted by a hiring manager. That's probably the issue. And therefore, we're another step away from the control, right? Because you're trying to get the hiring manager to do something that they don't want to do because they don't really care about the 200 people who didn't get the job. They want the one person that they want to hire, right? So why are they going to put any effort in when, I don't know, if they're working in a Costa Coffee, for example, they've got staffing to sort out, they've got stock to sort out, they've got the presentation of the shop, they've got the cleaning, they've got the financial performance of yesterday, they've got 101 jobs to do. The last thing they're going to be focused on is the 200 people who applied and aren't suitable. They're going to be most focusing on progressing the people down to the end. So having some service level agreements that people have bought into internally and understanding why it's important for them, well, actually, Dave, those 200 people aren't going to come into Costa next week. They might go into Cafe Nero instead. Sorry, I'm stealing somebody's story from earlier. I can't see you in the room to acknowledge you at the moment. Sorry. There you are. Thank you for that one. So having that agreement with hiring managers and having them understand why they should agree to it and why it's good for them massively increases your chances of getting them to do it. And then having the metrics in place to be able to report it and sort of say, hey, look, in this region, we're really good. We're giving feedback back within 48 hours. What can we learn from what those hiring managers are doing? Oh, in this region over here, it's really poor. It's taking 3 weeks to get feedback. And guess what? Our NPS result is half as good as a result. So having the data is really, really helpful. Having some two-way communication channels is actually really helpful as well in terms of dealing with those candidates. So quite often, some systems will have a, no reply at company name email that all goes out. Well, that's not great as a candidate. It's nice that I'm getting some updates, but if I've got a question, what do I do? Who do I go to? Where do I go to get that question? So again, where you have a volume which perhaps is just impossible to deal with individually, there are chatbot solutions out there, or there are FAQs. So again, have some sort of collection method where you can capture those common queries, because again, if you get asked the question 5 times, create a solution where the candidate can find that answer themselves, so they don't have to keep coming to you. You can set the expectations better. And then I guess the final point is around, again, engaging with hiring managers and making that feedback a non-negotiable as part of the recruitment process. I was talking to one of our clients a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that when they are taking a requisition, they sort of have the briefing meeting with the hiring manager, and point number 1 is their performance at giving feedback on previous recs they've worked with. So they literally are basically saying, I'm not going to take the rec from you based on your feedback. Now, of course, it's not quite, you can't be quite that black and white. You can't actually refuse to recruit. But it's a decent way of holding the hiring manager to account and saying, this is what I expect from you in the transaction, and in return, here's what I will do for you as your recruitment business partner. Here's what I need you to do. And the feedback is absolutely critical. And by the way, if you haven't given the feedback, then we're not going to move to the next stage. As I say, in reality, it's hard to be totally black and white about it, but it helps to get the hiring manager on board to understand why it's important to you, why it's important to the candidate, and why it should be important to them. So, as I say, this is something where we need to pull together both as an industry of recruiters, but also with hiring managers to get them on board to recognize that progress is being made, but there's still more to do. It's a lose-lose for everybody, right? It's bad for the candidate, it's bad for us, it's bad for mental health for everybody. We've seen that today. But there are processes, and as was mentioned earlier, you don't need a massive technology solution. There are really simple things you can do out there with just checklists and spreadsheets or free bits of software off the internet to look at the different stages of the business, application, interviewing, onboarding, to make sure that we are getting back to candidates in a way that's helpful and useful. And I guess the final points are the benefits for you are massive in terms of the reputation that your business has, and therefore the ease you have of sourcing candidates, the likelihood of them making it through the process, hiring managers being more satisfied with the interview process, and of course that crucial onboarding stage of actually getting that chair filled. And then I think it was the Gartner survey we saw earlier, was it sort of 78% of people who've had a good onboarding experience are likely to think about their career from the long-term point of view versus 29%, I think, who had a poor experience. So literally the longevity of that new hire and the likelihood of them becoming a successful employee who contributes to the culture and the performance of your business is absolutely crucial. So we'd love it if you come and talk to us outside. We've got Sam, we've got Paul, we've got Eva, we've got some free swag, although a lot of it has already gone. So somebody's pilfered an awful lot of those little charging wiggly things. If you've got one of those, congratulations. There's not many left. Yeah, do come and talk to us outside. We'd love to talk with you, and I'd love to take your questions. Thank you very much.